What's up, football-loving maniacs? Time for another edition of Three Honest Lads. We have three people. I feel a little bit like Jim Belushi. And they're pretty good ones. We have Michael Watts. I always do this camera thing, never know where he is. He's right there. But the star feature and our amazing guest that was kind enough for some odd reason to come back. But I'm going solo this time. No Neil Collins. He'll take care of that in the playoffs. John Hackworth, head coach of Louisville City. Coach, how are you, sir?
Well, great, Devin. Thanks for having me on. You both are scaring me a little bit, though, to start this podcast. I've got to be honest.
Would you have it any other way? That's par for the course. That's par for the course.
It's all good.
The mug, Hack? What's going on in the mug?
Just a little bourbon that my friends gave me, so I'm trying to enjoy it.
Ooh, that's gonna leave a mark. Good thing I said, just so everybody knows, come on. I said I've cleared my schedule for the evening. There's no workout today, and I made sure I got up early. And when I said I made sure I got up early, Kingston woke me up at 4 a.m. So we got a lot of work done. We were very proactive today. Picked out some things for the house on the addition and the remodel. Shoot me more money out the door. Got a couple hospital bills. Spent about an hour and a half on the phone with insurance. That was good. Spoke to Mike Watts for 5 seconds. So pretty much this is a standard day. I think we're just going to get right into it and talk to John Hackworth and see how this thing goes. I'm going to start here and make it simple for everyone. Coach, you come in 2018, see things out, get a championship 2019. You guys fall just a bit short, but again, another great year, 2020. Things are heating up again. I want to know in your mind the biggest difference with your team right now compared to the two previous year additions.
I think we have top to bottom more quality right now. And it gives our coaching staff a little bit more, some tough decisions when we're making selections, but it also gives us the versatility to roll out in different systems and formations, and that hopefully will make us more dangerous as we progress through this season.
For your systems and formations, you've talked to us in years past about when you do decide to try and bring somebody in, how hard it is to jump into a player and know this is exactly right for our culture. So much so that at certain points in time, you won't pull the trigger and bring someone in. You don't want to disrupt it. Makes perfect sense, and I get it. But in terms of a system and philosophies and all those ever-changing movements, how much of that can you personally instill in a player when maybe he hasn't been as accustomed to it, and especially if they're later on in their career?
It's a really good question, and I don't think there's a clear answer for it. You got to use your judgment and use all of the information that you have at your disposal to make a good decision one way or the other. You want to do your homework, though, so that you can put the odds of that decision being a positive one in your favor. And that's where I always come back to what are they like as an individual, because in a strong culture, in any, endeavor, you need the people to, I hate to use the word buy-in, but they need to understand what they're going into, and then they need to understand how to survive and excel in that culture.
I have one more quick follow-up because I know Mike wants to jump in, and I'm sorry. I don't know if you'll answer this publicly or not. Do you feel that you or the staff have gotten anything wrong in terms of those player acquisitions?
Of course. I mean, you don't get all of them right. So we've definitely – yeah, I mean, what was I doing hiring him, right? I mean, and how is he still here on my staff? It's crazy. You don't knock them all out of the park. And then you have to – that's why when they don't work as players, that's one thing. When they don't work as people, now you have a whole nother set of problems on your hands. So I would much rather deal with a really good person who, for whatever reason, it just didn't work out with their skill set, or, they're behind somebody else in the lineup, whatever that may be, than to bring somebody into a culture who becomes a problem because of the kind of person or character that they have.
John, I've worked around Louisville City now for 4 years, so I'm going to start off topic and then get back on topic. We get a chance to speak more or less every week for 8 months a year. Would you rather get a root canal or spend another hour talking to me?
Root canal for sure.
I knew it.
Root canal is exactly it now. You guys are a pleasure to talk to. You guys do good work. You ask hard questions. You find out more scoop and information that I don't want anybody to ever know. And somehow you two find it out, which is pretty amazing. And then you pass it along to the fans of the USL Championship, which makes the whole thing enjoyable. And as an outsider listening to you guys, sometimes I can't help but laugh. And then the insider on me, gets a little bit scared sometimes that you do know everything that you know.
That's fair. So I won't follow up with us or colonoscopy. But getting back into the actual portion that Devin's talking about, you come in, James O'Connor's built a really good team, a championship team, year after year after year. There's the culture from the top with Brad Estes and the ownership group, all the way down to the players who are running the team after James left for Orlando and you come in. To what extent do you begin to think about, we need to consider the long-term future, not only our core right now, but players that we're looking at, versus balancing, this is a win-now organization every year, and there hasn't been a drop-off yet. So it's hard to say we need to keep tooling up and rebuilding when the expectation is we're out to win a championship every year.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's a loaded question in a lot of ways, Mike, and I want to explain it in this context. When I first got here, we certainly had all of the things you're talking about. But with me coming in, being a new person into this organization, we had to adapt all sides to figure out how we were going to work together. And the relationships, you don't just walk into a culture and it's the same. Now you have to adapt, change, implement as you go. And so, right away when I got here, I brought a couple players in on loan that I felt were really important to help me implement the style of play that, I saw this club not only needing at that exact moment, but would help the long term. James Sands, was one of those guys. Jonathan Lewis was another one of them. And that helped us form our own identity when I first got here. And then every, day since, you have to cultivate that. Some things change. You bring in guys, some guys leave. It changes the dynamic, and it is never like you get to this place and you can sustain it. It's always going to have, you're trending upwards sometimes. I mean, Sack Hack was trending in Louisville for a long time this summer, until very recently. So it's not all, rainbows and butterflies over here. But you got to keep believing in what you do and working hard every single day and trusting not only what you believe in, but what the people around you are working towards.
It's interesting you bring that up, because I wanted to ask, this culture has created in Louisville an expectation that you will continue to reach a conference final every year, if not reach a USL Championship final. When you see things like Sack Hack, what goes through your mind? Is there kind of an ambivalence to it where that's just what people say? Is there, I need to be better? Are you pissed? I mean, where's your head at?
Yeah, I mean, I learned a long time ago not to listen to that kind of rhetoric, but I'm also still a human being. So it pisses me off when I hear it, especially when I feel like I don't deserve it. But it's natural, it's part of being in a club like Louisville where the expectation and the standards are so high, and that has fantastic, there's so many pros to that. And at the same time, you have to accept that this pressure is never ending. And when things don't go right, as the head coach, you're going to take the brunt of that angst. The fans are going to be upset. They're going to point the finger at somebody. So I totally get it. I accept it. I worked for Bob Bradley a long time ago, and he gave me great advice. He said, look, don't ever read into any of those things. If they say something good about you, don't listen to them. If they say something bad about you, don't listen to them. If they don't say anything, you're probably somewhere doing something right. So just ignore all of it, put your head down and go to work.
By the way, nice of you to keep Liquor Barn in business for the last few years.
Trust me, I've needed to. That's part of the way that I deal with all of this. You guys know that.
What about the front office? I shouldn't even say front office. What about the boys in the front line with you on the sidelines? Guys like Danny Cruz, Scott Budnick. I want to hone in on one of them, but I want to talk about the group in general. Just bringing them in with you when you came here. What was your thoughts when you so you have a team and you've got to find a way to bridge the gap and get into that culture. You and I have talked multiple times about how you were Skyping in with the triumvirate conversations with them while they were at the helm. But how do you then decide, okay, I'm going to take all of this over here, but this is working, and find a way to push that together?
Well, I mean, Danny and Scott are two different people, completely different situations. I'll give you a little bit of the background. I didn't know Scott Budnick at all. I mean, I didn't know him. A mutual friend of ours, Mike Makovic, who's a legend in this country as a coach, he shot me a text when he heard I got the job and said, hey, I think there's a guy that if you're looking for somebody to come help out with goalkeepers, he's in town. He gave me some background on Scott. Scott and I, our paths had crossed a little bit when he was playing in the league in the MLS. But we never really met or had a time for a relationship. So that one was brand new. That one was, hey, I'll take any help I can get, because when I arrived, it was just me. There was no assistant coaches here. There was the equipment manager, Ben Hulsman, and the athletic trainer, Scott Ritter. So, I mean, we were as bare bones a staff as possible. Scott volunteering to come in and help was a huge bonus, but it was a unknown. We had to start from scratch to build every part of a relationship there. Danny Cruz was completely different because I had known Danny since he was 15 years old. I'd had the wonderful opportunity to coach him when he was a bonehead, and he's still a bonehead. And now he's a father and a 30-year-old, and all joking aside, I mean, he is such a great person, and he has all the values, and his work ethic, whether it was as a player or now as a coach, or something I just felt like if I could take and bring somebody that I know really well, that I trust immensely, that I know has a passion for what they're doing and a work ethic that could fit what we're doing. So again, I had one on one side. I needed to kind of trial by error with Scott Budnick, and I had Danny Cruz, who I knew a lot about, and I just had to get him in here and working, knowing that I trusted him, and we would together do a really hopefully good job there.
But what if you didn't put all joking aside about Danny? Tell me one thing about Danny that stands out as like Danny is a bonehead. Free range.
Yeah, I'll give you an example from this last weekend. All right, I'm a little superstitious, and at the end of the game, I hand my book. You guys have made jokes about my book, and I have a pen. And if we win a game, that pen has to be the pen that I use the next game, right? Because that's the reason we won, is the superstitious pen of, get this, right? For the second time this season, Danny has lost that pen. Like, I don't get that, Danny.
Red alert, Indy.
This pen
There's
is
one on
important.
Wednesday.
Wait, when was the first one?
Ironically, it was after we played Indy the first time, and this was a really nice pen. Like, this last one he lost was like a Marriott pen that had yeah, exactly. It was that pen. It was a little beat up, Devin, but it was that pen. Which ironically I have a couple of those myself, but I can't just use any Marriott pen. I have to use the one pen. And so, all joking aside, Danny has a propensity to leave stuff in places all over. He has an ability to lose some very valuable material that I cherish, and somehow, even though he knows he was responsible for it, he loses.
True or false? Danny Cruz is not allowed to ride the go-karts in Disneyland because he's not tall enough.
Come on, man.
Wow. Wow.
I already made a height joke before we poor Deep, man. Next bottle is going to Danny Cruz.
This is for Danny.
The thing is, you got to be careful with Danny because although he's not, he's not reaching that level of height that we would all expect. He's freakishly strong. Like his calves alone are probably bigger than all of our thighs put together. I mean, he's a freak of nature that way. So he makes up for it in a lot of other ways. But I'll leave the Disney ride to you, Devin.
There is a person who we haven't spoke about yet that is no longer with the Louisville City family. It was someone who was, you've spoken to me about for a long time. I don't think people really know much about Andrew DeLallo and how he followed you here right away from Bradenton. Can you just kind of walk me through bringing him here, what he was to the family, and what he's done for this game in this club?
Yeah, and I should have mentioned him, and I meant to. It was on my brain, and my old brain sometimes forgets. But when we talk about bringing Danny here at the same exact time, and as important was to bring Andrew DeLallo here. And Andrew basically came in. He was one of my administrators with the under 17 residency program. And when you have somebody that can administrate and organize and take care of all of the minutia of details outside of what you see, during the games, and know the standards specifically of how you want things done, that's where Andrew DeLallo is absolutely hands down one of the best that I've ever worked with. Again, it helps when you have a real intimate knowledge of each other and a trust, especially when times are hard. He has earned the opportunity that he is, when he left here a couple months ago to go to Austin, he's working with Claudio and Josh now. I think he's going to be hugely successful. I keep telling him that at some point when he's the GM of an MLS team, he'll have to maybe think of me at some point, especially if the Sack Hack fans get their way at some point. But was so important and did a lot here. Again, we go back to there was already a strong culture here, but you always have to go back and implement new ideas, and Andrew DeLallo was a massive part of that, and he deserves a huge amount of credit for the success we've had both in 2018 and 2019. Even now, we haven't really replaced him yet. Ben Hulsman is doing a great job. Danny and Scott, we've all taken on different responsibilities because he's not really replaceable right now. That's something that we'll have to try to do in the off season.
I didn't know if Watts, you jumping in or no? I thought you might have want to go into there. I just saw you looking. I was like, oh shit, am I going to have to get out of the way again?
Nah.
I have a question about this season. Two-part. The first part is we got the opportunity back in, I believe it was April, when you were kind enough to sit down with Neil Collins from the Tampa Bay Rowdies. We kind of talked about one of the games last year, dissected that, and you had given us an update on how you guys were kind of staying in touch with players, what the activities were like. What has changed? And I'm sure it's a lot, but what has changed in terms of routines, given the COVID protocols, training environment, living environment, meals, all of that stuff for you guys? Because people don't know you're pretty regimented and you guys have things pretty set in stone about how you like to do that. So how has that affected you since coming back?
Yeah, and that's a huge question because there's so many details, but something as simple as that, I believe that when you show up for work in the morning, to have, any kind of personal moment with a player, that always for me started with a handshake and a look in the eye and just hey, how you doing? Good morning. Great to see you today. It's very different, not having that. I mean, we've kind of gotten to the elbow pump now and we're wearing a face mask, but we had to at least get used to this new normal of not having that same physical and emotional interaction. I give you another example, post game when you should be hugging or pre-game when we usually go around the room and hug it out. Like we haven't been able to do those things. So you miss some of this dynamic that is so crucial to your environment and culture. Aside from that, I mean, just think we've all been cooped up in the same place with the same people for a long time. And we still have a long ways to go. You look at our country right now, and the numbers, especially in the Midwest, are skyrocketing right now. And yet here we are trying to be the best version of ourselves that we can be. And, we win a big game on Saturday night. And the first message I have to say is, do not go out, do not dare, put yourself in a position where you might bring something back to our bubble that could potentially affect us. And that's it's such a crazy dynamic to try to work through this whole time, Devin. Again, there's other examples, but those are the things that come to my mind.
You call it a bubble. It's unique that USL was the first to go back to home. And some of that obviously is fiscal responsibility on the parts of the owners, where putting a whole league of 35 teams in Utah or in Orlando simply wasn't feasible. To what extent do you guys try and keep this a bubble, especially now? People don't realize these players, a lot of them have kids and they're going to school, and it's not quite as simple as it was when it was everyone stay home except for the soccer playing dad or husband who goes out to work, right? I mean, it's different now.
Yeah, it has evolved. When we first got back together and we're training in small groups, like we were literally in that bubble, and we operated in such a way that we wouldn't even allow ourselves to be in the same room together. We only allowed ourselves to meet on the field. So no, pre-training meetings, no video, no, it was just do your own laundry, show up at the field, be 10 yards apart, and don't ever come into contact, with anybody 6 feet within your, it was weird. It was strange. It was really difficult to deal with as we've progressed and now gotten to a point where, now we're in the locker room and there are some more things that are normal. We still have this feeling of being in a bit of a bubble. And that is that the players live in one apartment complex where we've said to everybody, hey, who's your immediate bubble? Is it your wife or your child? Is it your girlfriend, or is it your roommate? But outside of that, that's it. You can't do anything else. It's strange for me. Like, I've had friends, shocking for any of you that, I do have a couple friends in Louisville, but I haven't been able to do anything with them. We haven't gone to dinner. We haven't gone out to a bar to enjoy a tasty beverage, if you will. Thank God you guys haven't been here, so I didn't have to foot the bill for you guys' drinking problem. But besides that, we have not done a lot, and that takes a lot of, discipline and just the social responsibility of it. We're not even talking yet, and maybe you guys will. The other, kind of elephant in our room right now is the social, unrest that this country is going through, and how that has weighed on our players and our staff and our club, because we are adamant that we should be a very small part of hopefully change in our own community. So there's a lot of things in this crazy year of 2020 that none of us thought were coming down and have affected, our performance a little bit, but the way we work more specifically.
Mike, I kind of wanted to change gears here a little bit, but Watts, when you and I were talking earlier, you had a question we had kind of jotted down that I think would be a great way to segue to some other areas. You mentioned 3 things. You want to bring that up to him?
Yeah. And for one, before we get there, you mentioned the social justice issues in this country. Soccer is so tribal, where it's a fan base, it's a collective. A locker room is so much like that. For you as a coach, as a white male, how do you have those conversations with players? I mean, what's that like?
Well, my way of trying to do it was to let some of those players who had some of those experiences, some of our Black players had to be the voices that we truly listened to first. I mean, I could not be that voice. I haven't lived that life. I haven't felt for years and decades and lives, before our own, what that was like. I have absolutely lived, what people now refer to as a privileged life, and that's hard for somebody like myself until you go through that experience. So in a very direct answer to your question, I relied on those guys who have had those experiences in their life and to share their stories. And we talked about a lot of hard situations and how we could be positive aspects of change going forward, and what stances did we need to take. And I've really tried to let the players lead that discussion and tried to understand, educate myself, relearn some things that I didn't know previously. I was really trying to be open to any new ideas and to, again, some really harsh realities that I took for granted, quite frankly.
Yeah. It's tough to transition away from that. I think the soccer community has been quite clear about where they stand. I think the NWSL put it best. You're either with us or against us. And I think I speak for the vast majority. We're certainly with you.
If I can just stay on for 1 second, because I'm ready to go off on this topic. I do not understand how people are trying to make this a political, conversation. It doesn't make any sense to me. And it drives me crazy when I hear, fans of any sport try to make it about politics. This has nothing to do with politics. This has to do with equality, human rights, being fair, treating people equally, justice, all of these things that you cannot deny. That's not politics. People can make it about that, but that's not what it is. And, when I hear some of the things that I have to hear nowadays, and it just infuriates me, and I'm sick of it, quite frankly.
Yeah, agreed. Hack, I want to turn back to soccer. In terms of U.S. soccer, MLS, USL Championship, I mean, look, this is as wide-ranging as it gets. You have been quite direct with us. I said to Devin earlier, I go, John Hackworth is kind of the USL Championship's Bob Bradley, in that you sort of have the resume to carry weight when you say things. With that in mind,
more hair too.
Yeah. 3 things you would most want to see change in the U.S. soccer landscape, either to make it more competitive on the world stage, to make it flat out make it better. What are 3 things you do in U.S. soccer right now if you're in charge?
Wow.
All right, I'm a genie. I gave you wishes.
I will try to answer that. I think the one thing from a federation level, I believe that if we implemented standards and rules across our country at all levels where the game was played the same way, we would have a huge advantage going forward. We would have a better culture. We would have a better understanding. We would have better players, coaches, referees, administrators. And this is I could answer this one all day, but when you have high school soccer that has different rules from professional soccer, and the YMCA has their rules, and the church leagues have their rules, and then the academies have a different set of rules, and college, from conference to conference has different rules, and now you get to the pros and it's different. It makes, this is one sport. This is the world's sport, by the way. And it's governed by a very short list of rules that aren't that hard to follow. And yet in America, we have figured out a way from one level to the next, from one side of the street to the next, to play it with different rules. That makes no sense to me. So if I could change that, I would just go back to say, hey, let's all stick to the guidelines. Let's play this sport the same way. Let's implement it at all levels so that whether you're a referee, whether you're a fan, whether you're a player or a coach, you know exactly what the principles of this sport, the beautiful game, is all about. That's number one. That would take a lot, Mike, but that would be my wish. Number two, I think we have to get to a point in this country where it's not just about people making money and the system that they make money off of soccer. And this is not directed just towards like the MLS owners or the USL Championship owners or different leagues. You know, you can filter this one down to amateur soccer clubs. But what I'm saying about that is that there needs to be a system where, and I'll use the example of Louisville. I mean, we've been to the final 3 years in a row, and yet people in this town call us minor league, you know, professionals. And I work with a group of men here that, in my humble opinion, are as good a group of professionals as I've ever worked with. And I've been fortunate to work with, you know, national team level players on multiple occasions. I mean, they are not second division. And if we had a system similar to what the rest of the world does, there would be some way for Louisville City to be at least in some kind of competition that was on an equal format to the highest level of country in this game. And I think if we had that system from top to bottom, again, from the YMCA rec leagues all the way to the MLS First Division, we would be in a much better position as a country. Then you want another one? Holy cow. The soapbox. I guess I would finish by saying that I would,
This is great.
I want to get rid of this idea that we are inferior to our counterparts around the world. And I think that's a problem that we all have, to be fair, because all of us think that the soccer is better on the other side of the pond. We think that the soccer is better in South America. That's not necessarily true. We're not inferior. We have wonderful experiences. We have wonderful players. We have wonderful coaches and administrators and referees. We just don't give ourselves enough credit sometimes. And I think that once we, you know, look within ourselves and say, hey, you know, we don't always need to have that voice that has a different dialect, and we don't need that experience all the time. We need to trust ourselves more. That doesn't mean that we don't need outside influence. Absolutely. People from all over the world. This is the global game. But I also think we know a lot more than we give ourselves credit for. And I want to start doing that. And I absolutely know so many American coaches that do not get the credit they deserve for being excellent, you know, and being as good as anybody around the world. Referees, administrators, you know, the whole thing, players especially. Hopefully right now you're seeing that a lot of players are getting that credit. But it's upsetting to me that you have to go to Europe in order to be even considered, you know, at that same level. I get it, and that there's part of that, but it shouldn't be that way. We should give ourselves a lot more respect.
I want to piggyback off that, combine it with the national team and its programs, moving into the youth level, which obviously you have a massive amount of experience in. The way I wrote this question down is obviously massively loaded. So I'm going to tell you what I wrote down, but I'm going to rephrase it. I wrote down, what's the biggest issue with the U.S. men's national team right now? The bourbon's kicking in. And I don't think that's a fair question, because I think that it encompasses a lot of what you just said. And it opens up, you know, if you can bridge some of those gaps, solve some of those problems, it opens up opportunities elsewhere. I want to phrase it this way. In December of 2019, there were, at that point in time, for all intents and purposes, 12 coaching jobs that are always available at the national team level, 23s, 20s, 19s, 18s, 17s, 16s. You can think about it as it is, but I'm just using this as an example. Out of those 12, I'm talking about male and female. Only 2 at that point in time are occupied. The list goes on and on about who's left them. Yourself, although we understand why with the opportunity, but you've left. Rafael Wicki, that's most recent. Tab Ramos. I mean, there's been a lot of people in this country that have had a huge effect on players at the highest level that are no longer associated with the national program. Why?
I have my own opinion on that. U.S. Soccer has recently gone through some crazy changes, and that has affected a lot of those kind of positions. Definitely a new direction for U.S. Soccer, but I don't understand how some of those people that you've just referenced are no longer involved with the national teams. And when I look at the potential of, if we just focus on the men's national team, I think the potential is huge. But I think it's huge because of work that we've done the previous 5 years, where Tab was in charge of all of the youth national teams, where Omid Namazi was an integral part of that as the head coach of the U18s, and where, the U16s were being coached by Sean Shakaris. Like, we had top to bottom people that were like-minded, strongly opinionated, but willing to work collectively and develop players through that whole pathway. And right now, we don't have that, to your point. And that's a scary proposition because, player development and national teams become, you don't see the production of that right away. It's a process that takes years. And right now, we're probably going to be really good because we have so many talented young American players coming through the pipeline. But without having those positions filled, without having national team camps, without having competition internationally, it's a scary, scary proposition to look at long term.
Just a bit of housekeeping. I know Michael Watts has to depart us. You have about 15 minutes, buddy. Less than that, correct? 10?
Not true.
Oh,
I have 2 minutes.
okay.
What?
I have 2 minutes left, so you guys
Perfect.
get your questions in quick.
Okay, that's what it is.
I'm
Watts,
joking.
you're
Yikes. No, this story we're recording on a Monday. I don't know when this is coming out.
later this week.
Yeah, I was supposed to call Portland and OL Reign in NWSL. Thoughts with everyone involved on the entire West Coast, if we're being honest. With the wildfires there, we're thinking of you guys, but the air quality, again, is so poor that they won't be able to play the game tomorrow night either. So I believe the news is already out that it's rescheduled for September 30th, and therefore my chat with Mark Parsons, who is delightful, also not happening in a few minutes. So Devin, continue on.
Thank you for that, by the way, Michael.
Should we talk about climate change on this podcast since we've gone into social unrest? We've talked about the pandemic. I mean, we might as well get into climate change. Is it real? Is it not? Who knows?
Hack, I you know what? Actually, I kind of want to go off on this for a second. As a announcer, my job is to document what's in front of me, and I've been told that by enough people that I recognize that it's critical to my job security. That in mind, as a coach, as a leader of an organization, is that part of your thinking where you don't want to be the one who stirs the drink too much, where you're ticking off everybody around you by getting into what you believe? Because I feel strongly about a lot of things, but that doesn't mean I'm trying to push that off on other people. For you as a coach in a place like Louisville, Kentucky, in a place like Philadelphia, two vastly different geographic and demographic areas, how do you go from place to place? Is it almost like shape-shifting to an extent?
Well, there's always a fine line about how much of that you can do, but through my own experiences, I've always just trusted the decisions that I've made and relied on some basic leadership principles that I don't understand how coaches, for example, for soccer coaches, I'm a soccer coach, all right? And if I lied to my players on a regular basis, like, I wouldn't be here. If I made as many mistakes, that affected their livelihoods, if it affected their health, I wouldn't even be in the job. So how, as a soccer coach, am I being held accountable for just some basic leadership values that, in the context of the world, are not being applied? Like, I'm getting a little bit, in the weeds there, but I feel like you have to stick to your principles, and you have to be true and honest to them all the time, and you can't waver. And so when you make some hard decisions, maybe it's a little easier because you're in a locker room and it's with a group of, people that you trust and work with daily. So you can say things and you can lead. And there's obviously a lot that's said in the locker room that never gets out of that to the public eye. But yet we do have to go in front of that bright spotlight, at least every weekend, or in this case, we're doing it 3 times this week, where whether it's the shirt that we're wearing or armband that we put on, we have to be, committed to those values and those principles. And we can't be deceitful. We're not allowed to. We are held accountable for our actions. We're held accountable for the things that we believe or don't believe. And that's where I just think you have to be consistent. I've been doing this long enough that I know who I am. I'm totally confident, and I don't expect everybody to agree with me, but I do know, and I'm very assured that I feel like I have a good set of values because I have to lead so many different ideas and different people. Again, I guess that's a long-winded way of saying that I think that it's really important that people, whether it's me or you, are strong enough to, when things are out there in the world that are not right, we have to say things. And for both of us, Mike, and for you too, Devin, I'm sure there's things we can't say. There's times when we need to stay tight-lipped, but there's certainly times like now in today's society that we have to be strong enough to, and whether that means we lose some fans or we lose some followers on Twitter or whatever it is, we have to be strong enough to do that.
All right, Devin, back to you.
It's a very.
You guys had no idea that I was going to get on a soapbox and preach.
No,
No, I knew. I've been on enough calls with you over the last 4 years, 4 years, whatever. I know.
The biggest thing for Watts and I is kind of some of it is, and the people that know us. I mean, I'm trying to say this the right way. It's hard because we can't always say things, and we are put in positions by the league that we can't always express how we feel. And I respect that. I understand it's part of our profession, but then you can also go with that where it's maybe not our place to say things sometimes. And, we talk about giving the players, giving the platform to people that deserve it, or I don't want to say maybe are more influential, but maybe people that just deserve it a bit more than we do. But when we are put in that spot, sometimes we can't say it, and that's frustrating. And I agree with you, Coach. I don't understand how it's political at times. I don't understand. I've said it this way. I don't understand race. And the reason I say that is the locker room. You know me. I grew up in a locker room. I didn't give a shit what color you were. I didn't give a shit how tall you were. I did, but I didn't care what you were bringing to the table, because if you played hard, we were all the same. And it didn't, if your skill set wasn't there, like you worked hard, like you were my friend, like that's all that mattered to me. And, from, I think the first time that I really experienced it, and I say I obviously didn't experience it. I mean, I'm in the same demographic. I'm 36 years old. I'm white. I'm, in my opinion, a really fucking good looking dude. And, I fall into a group that like, I don't have to deal with a lot of things that my friends or that other communities do. And actually, a player that you might remember, I don't know if you remember Asa Pepe or not, from South Florida, but Asa, he moved his freshman year from the South Florida area, and he moved to Minnesota. And I won't name the town, but he moved to Minnesota, and towards the end of his freshman year, they had to move him back because the area that they were living in was so racistly profound that his parents didn't feel comfortable keeping him there. Now, some people might say, well, his parents didn't feel comfortable. He's mixed, he's mulatto. His father was black, his mother was white, and his mother remarried a white man He has 5 other siblings that are all white, so he is the only black person in his family. Skin was never an issue for him ever growing up. Not for anyone. He was still one of my best friends, sitting on a hospital bed right now, just went through a surgery, was in my wedding. I never understood that until he came back. And to see a friend of mine experiencing that was really, really hard for me, because you don't know how to fix it because he's just hurting. And I think obviously globally, I just made that about me for a second. I'm not trying to. I'm trying to give people an opportunity to understand my feelings on race and how ridiculous the entire situation is around the country right now, because this country is in a bad freaking spot. And I think a lot of things could be solved a lot simpler than we make them. And yeah, there's my soapbox. I'll get off it before
I do want to mention, like, there is an element of these protests where when you're on TV for 2 hours, you walk a tightrope. So I should explain that to people listening. There is an element of you don't want to incoherently string together your thoughts that's well-intentioned, but you end up stepping in it.
Yeah.
And so there is an element of you want to make sure that you follow the protocols of it, because the league's message is my message too. But when you start continuing down that line, if you start veering off because you're giving your own personal opinion, ultimately it's not your error. So we have gone way off the rails, which I knew any interview with John Hackworth would end up doing.
I blame Danny Cruz.
Well,
it's all Danny's fault.
Maybe, Sharni, I'll have to edit this a little bit, but I do think you guys are both making a really important point, and it's that nothing can be put into a perfect little box. And you can't – I even listen to people saying the word they, they – and I want to say, who are they? Because that's a wrong way to phrase it too. There's protesters, and in my opinion – most of them are peaceful, but there's also those that are not. I mean, and there's so many different sides to it that anytime I think we're talking and we're stereotyping, groups of people or individuals, we're in dangerous territory there. So let's move on to something else. And then, but I feel for you guys being on air and having to do that. I don't have that same challenge, because I get to say it within a context of a locker room, and I get to be brutally honest. I have to. And I work with a group of men that I trust immensely, and not that we have all of the same ideas about life, but we're more like-minded than we are not.
But ultimately you lead a community as a coach. And that's why I was so interested in hearing that, because ultimately you're the one who gives a press conference every week when Napo runs over to pick up the shirt that says "Justice for Breonna Taylor" in Lucas Oil Stadium. You're the one in the camera shot right next to him. So there's an element of that where.
And I fucking love it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
No, I texted, this is inside baseball. Jonathan Lintner is the PR guy. I texted him. I go, I want to know precisely what was on that shirt, because it was difficult to see with the lighting as it was from that camera lens. I saw Breonna Taylor, but I wanted to get the exact message right, because if Napo's going to go literally show that shirt to 7,000 people, the least I can do is quote it directly.
Yeah, and you look at the athletes around the world that are, seeking that same message. And really the message, Breonna is the message, but the message is stronger than that people are sick of the injustice. People are sick of being treated in a certain way, and that whether that's in Louisville or around the world, we can do better. And if we all strive to do better, to treat each other more equitably, then we're going to be in a better spot. And I think that's what a lot of, and I'm proud of the footballing world, that the messaging has been very clear from our sport, whether that's from, you see the games being played in the Bundesliga when they first came back, to the EPL, to the USL Championship, to the NWSL. It has been very consistent, and I'm really proud of our sport for doing it that way.
Let's go to the stadium, the cathedral, as you call it. I mean, Mike and I got the opportunity to tour it last year, right before its completion. Walk me, what'd your office end up like? Did you get everything you wanted? Did you figure out how to get that fruit punch fountain in there? Is there in fact a tunnel that runs underneath the stadium directly to your house? Is there a bat phone to Brad Estes? Just kind of give us a peek behind the curtains.
Yeah, there's definitely a bat phone to Brad Estes. All right. There is no tunnel. I like to ride my bike to and from work, and I haven't quite figured out a way to tell the security guards that it's still me underneath the helmet and the spandex. I get stopped on a regular basis, and I have to give them, who are you? And I'm like, I'm just the head coach, speech a lot. But this place is amazing. And I am truly very blessed and fortunate to work here. It is a fantastic venue. I can't, the only hard part is that we have not been able to put 15,000 plus people in this thing. But that's what, again, this pandemic has done to all of us. But I mean, when Antoine scores that goal this past, Saturday night, and even though there's only 4,500 people in the place, I mean, it became electric. And I can't wait until it's full and you're really seeing the passion of our fans and the noise and the energy. It's amazing. It truly is.
Best seat in the house. Coach's technical area. Up in the stands, aerial view behind, I believe, would that be the south goal? The closed end. Okay. So technical area, closed end of the stadium.
The Cooper section.
Stopenall end.
Exactly. The luxury suites, or on the open end, beverage in hand, vertically strung out over the Modelo bar.
Dan, well, I've only experienced one of those seats for a soccer game, so I can't tell you anything.
How is the Modelo bar then? Tell us, how is it?
I haven't been there yet. I haven't been there. I told Christy the other day that I can't wait to go watch his team play because I want to be a fan in this stadium. This stadium is too cool. I want to sit in all those spots that you just mentioned. And by the way, I definitely will. Hopefully the people won't recognize me so that I can get away with having the bourbon and Modelo and cruising from one spot to the next. But there is not a bad seat in this house, and there are so many cool vantage points to see the game. The field, is fantastic, and the sight lines, and it's just a cool vibe because you can see the downtown skyline. We're less than a mile away from downtown. You got these wonderful bridges that are in the background. Can't say enough. Again, just absolutely blessed to be able to work in a place like this. And I think it's amazing that we're talking about a USL Championship club that is doing it.
I want to piggyback off your ability to watch there. I did reach out to the Louisville City community and made them aware that you were going to be kind enough to come on. A couple of housekeeping here of questions that were asked, one of which is from Louisville Hedgehogs, and they said, what impact does he see Racing Louisville FC having on his team, and would you be willing to play a friendly against them?
Can you tell me what the Louisville Hedgehogs are? Because they've, all of a sudden they're blowing up. And I want to just say thank you, and, you're wonderful. But I don't know whether it's one person on Twitter or 300 people. I mean, what is that? So will we play them in a scrimmage, huh? I mean, I have no problem with that. But, that'll be something that I don't know Christy great, but Christy, Holly, and I have in our communication, I really enjoy right now having a soccer conversation with him and just talking about how we can work collectively to truly grow this club. And so I do think we're going to have some cool interaction between the staffs, and, we are under one umbrella. We are one club, which I think is kind of unique. We have this brand new training facility that's going to be amazing, which is right down the road from here. So we have so many positives going on. Christy seems to be a person of experience that I'm going to look forward to working with and hearing his take on how things are and how he wants his teams to play. I'm excited.
Just another one to throw in here. This one, let me read this
Can
correctly.
you answer who the Hedgehogs are? Do you know?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. So I have the Louisville Hedgehogs. I should probably follow them back, huh? Follow. There we go. The unofficial official supporters group of Lou City fans living on the ledge. Go City, go racing. Ledgehogs for the city. They joined in August 2020. They've got 80 followers right now, and they've just, everything right now is just, like you said, it's been about the club, the culture. Here's a good one.
Guys, that bio is more of a mouthful than the Louisville Indianapolis Proximity Association football contest. You got to shorten that up a little bit, folks.
Hey, as long as they're not the group that had Sack Hack going around recently.
Did you ever think, and Mark Briggs is a friend of the pod, so I'm not trying to rip on Briggsy. Did you ever think they're just trying to bring you to Sacramento?
Yeah, who knows? Briggsy's a friend of mine, and hopefully he's not listening to this, but no, it's who knows.
I got another one here. This one comes from, actually, let me read it first. True or false? I can't even say it with a straight face. Hang on. True or false? Danny Cruz is too tall to play with the kids on the outdoor futsal court. That comes from at Mike Watts on air.
At Mike.
No.
Wow. I mean, you guys are killing my boy. All right.
I never said that.
I am the only one that's allowed to kill my boy. All right. And
apparently Devin and Danny have a pretty solid. Is it a text, a DM chain?
We're pretty active on the DMs. He was giving me some. Let's just say this: the three of us know the subject. We said it will be the subject that will not be named, like Voldemort coming on, and he had reached out because of it. But yeah, we've had some interesting exchanges on the DM levels, and he actually was the one last March or April when all this was going down. I did a prank on my wife, and it was because of something that he shared to me. I think it was with Christian from Houston Dynamo. He did on his wife, so I stole that and I bid it.
Christian Ramirez, yep.
Yeah, Christian Ramirez. I do have another question here. This one is from the Groove Machine, and it probably has to do with the most recent game. Would having one of them chasing the official with a cowbell help improve officiating?
No.
It can't hurt. I mean, you can't get – well, I should probably not say anything.
Yeah, let's move on to the next one. You'll get yourself in trouble.
Fine, but if he's willing to do it, go ahead.
Okay, fair enough. I'm pretty sure that's a get-out-of-jail-free card from the security by John Hackworth at Lynn Family Stadium. Louisville Heretics would like to know, with all of the movement that Lou City is capable of, when will Hackworth Soccer and Danny Cruz, 25, in case anybody doesn't know, that's John Hackworth, the coach we're talking to, and Danny Cruz, who can't ride the go-karts, roll out the 1-1-1-1-1-1-1-1-1 formation?
Yeah, I think I'm going to have to study that one a little while longer before I put it into play here.
Ask Bob Lilly. When you
Have you just proved you don't go to church much, or maybe you proved that? Yeah, no. Maybe you go too much. They're heretics.
Yeah,
heretics.
It's heretics. Actually, there was you know what? I got to give Mike Watts credit on this one. I'm not going to ask the question because I thought it was really cool, and it's something I would love to be involved in somehow one day. Now that I have a son in the world, Mike, why don't you talk about that family question?
Yeah, man. You and I were talking before we started recording. Morgan Hackworth goes to Memphis. Then he goes to San Diego. So he plays for Landon Donovan now. He's started the last few games, both huge wins for the team. Okay, it's one thing that he's in your conference. Now he's playing on the West Coast. What's it like staying up at – I was up at 12:30 watching that match last night, so I think I have a decent idea. But now you're following both conferences, and I'm sure there's a lot of pride in watching your son follow dad into the family profession, back into soccer.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I did have to take a nap between 9 and 10 o'clock last night, but I did rally. The wife woke me up, and we watched the game together, and we're just proud parents at that point. I did think, though, I've watched so much more of the West Coast games now that it's a little bit of an advantage because I now have a much better understanding of the the soccer that's played in the West Coast, and I know the players.
You're ready for the final.
I'm ready for the final, baby. Bring it on. So it's fun, though. It's really fun, and I'm super proud of Morgan. To give him credit, and I know I'm his dad, so I'm not really going to say anything bad about him on a podcast, but I mean, he wants to do this by himself. He wants to be his own man. He wants to earn everything he gets by himself and not have, his dad, do that for him. And I think he's tried to do that both in Memphis and now San Diego. And I'm just proud of him taking that on by himself. And clearly right now he's playing well and he's adding to his team's success. So I like his attitude towards how to be the best that he can be. And I think that's going to be good for him the rest of his life.
But if you could be bad about your son on this podcast, give me one story about Morgan Hackworth as a young player, an embarrassing soccer story relating to your son.
Wow. An embarrassing soccer story related to my son. I don't know that I can think of one off the top of my head. I coached Morgan as a young player, from the rec all the way up through. He was about 13 years old, and I don't. Honestly, I'm going to sound terrible here, and I know I'm just being forgetful because I'm sure there's something that he did, but I can't think of it off the top of my head.
That's a good kid.
He's a good kid. Lucky dad.
Is it of any ambition of yours? Remove systems, remove environments, anything. Is it any ambition of yours anywhere to coach him again at the professional level?
Nope. That's not something that I ever think about, or not even anything I want to, worry about or think about. If it happens, it would be interesting. I know he and I have dealt with that before, and I don't think it would change. But I mean, all I want to be is Morgan's dad, really. So I get enough pleasure out of that, and I get to watch as a fan when I watch him play, which is a lot of fun.
And although you probably won't go further into detail, I would like to be clear. He was not the player or situation that you were on the phone with the other day in a VIP quiet style phone call that we talked about.
That is correct. He is not that player.
Okay, there it is. And that's it. And no more on – okay.
Can I just say Devin can't wait to coach his son Kingston at Liverpool in 20 years? He can't wait.
No.
Devin, I just made you the successor to Jurgen Klopp.
Nope.
You can't just take the compliment.
I'd rather not coach at Liverpool if I didn't have to coach him.
Yeah, for what it's worth, Hack, your buddy Dave Sarakin gave Devin a honorary A license when we were talking back in March. Devin starts diagnosing what it's going to look like. It's the first game of the year, and he goes, check your mailbox in a few days.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, I'm going to have to talk to Dave.
All right.
A license, man.
We all know I'm a D student.
I defer to Dave for a lot of things, but if he's going to start handing out A licenses to people like Devin, I mean, we have problems.
I mean, you guys do have problems. It makes no sense. I have one more question, Mike. I don't know. Do you have one more, or do you want me to go?
Let me get this one out. What are we drinking? This is actually not bourbon, which is a disappointment.
Go ahead.
Dev, what do you got, man?
I got to get my bottle. Well, mine's in it. See, we're classy in this house. We got decanters and shit.
This is classy.
Hang on. Go ahead.
All right. I'm not in my office officially, so this is not officially in my office, but I'm drinking some Old Forester.
Classy.
We do have another bottle in here. Danny, he's not good on purchasing bourbon, so he brings in what we call swill. And there is a bottle of swill here as well, but I won't share that with our soccer loving
Meeting club or some bullshit like that.
What were you drinking? No, Old Forester.
Old Forester.
How do you know that, Devin, when you were away?
Saw the label from afar. It bounced off that window over there that came off the mirror, and I caught a glimmer from the corner of my eye. It actually came through that hourglass, and the smell just stings the nostrils.
Some friends of mine just recently bought me a bottle of Peerless, and I got to be honest, I can't wait to open that bad boy up. So
shit's pretty good, man. Good.
Looking forward to that. I'll tell you what.
Thank the Heretics or something like that.
Heretics. This one is actually it's kind of an interesting story. It's not that it's like a ridiculous bourbon. I think it's pretty good. I think it's well priced for what it is. So this is Noah's Mill. It's Noah's Mill. So it's a high proof. I would actually consider it similar to like Booker's. It's 57.15, so it's 114.3 proof. I like higher proofs. It actually has like a really heavy aroma of like peanutty finish to it. But the reason it means so much to me is I bought this bottle and I just finished it. I bought this bottle in Louisville. I finished it today, heavily, as you could tell. I bought this bottle in Louisville at the 2018 final. The hotel I was staying at, there was not a mix up, but just basically what happened is myself, Michael Watts, and our sidebar reporter at that point in time was Julie Stewart-Binks. We were in a different hotel than all of the USL crew, all of the production crew. We had our own thing, and the bar down at the bottom, I was talking with the guy, and I spent a little bit of time there, and by a little bit, I mean every night where they had to kick me out. And he introduced this to me. And I was like, man, that's so great. And he pointed me to a liquor store, and I ended up picking up a bottle and bringing it back home. And it was the first final that I had ever called on site. So yeah. Just kind of helped. And I've actually never looked to find it down here, so hopefully we can figure that one out.
I'm gonna go look for it, and I'll tell you what. That was a pretty good night. Glad you're having fond memories that night. But I tell Luke Spencer all the time that he can't tell my wife Trisha, but that was the best night of my life. And he can't tell my kids, especially Morgan or Keaton or Larson. Nobody can know that was truly an incredible night.
62nd minute, never forget it. Oh.
Yeah. I like doing a quick word association. I want to ask you a couple things. I want one sentence, nothing more. First thing that comes to your mind with a couple specific places, all right?
I suck at this, okay? I'm just going to tell you right now, like, I'm bad at this. My brain goes to a whole paragraph and then an essay. But I'll try, Mike.
Prep for this F, bro. USF.
Where I first met Devin Kerr.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
You guys met there?
Yeah.
That's terrible.
Wow, I just knocked it out of the park, man.
I mean, now you're the one with all the words, Mike. He killed it, and you're trying to get on.
Oh, God. Bradenton, Florida.
How old were you, Devin, at that point?
What year was this, by the way? Because I'll answer that next.
I'll never forget Cleveland Brown and I came into your camp.
Yeah, your whole team did, right?
No, that was the second time.
Okay.
Maybe 16, 17, somewhere in there. My whole team came the next time, yeah.
Devin, what year was that?
(2001), 2000?
2007.
Yeah.
I was on the U7s.
Yeah, but you read it at a 12-year-old level, Mike. Give yourself some credit. That was a long time ago. Interestingly enough, you know who I see, or actually I had seen for quite some time, was Anthony Finazzo. He
really?
He's down in my area now. So married, kid.
Tell him I said hello.
I will, for sure.
All right, Mike.
I'm going to keep associating.
Yeah, we're going to keep going.
Wait, I got to tell a story that the team that Devin played on was a phenomenal youth team. They had a wonderful coach who's a dear friend of mine. One of my assistants actually at USF the last 2 years I was there. Unfortunately, he passed away a couple of years ago. Mike Duncan. He brought a lot of good people together and had a wonderful team that Devin played on.
And it was a real bitch that Devin got sent off in the first game you saw. Who knows how things could have been different. John, Bradenton, Florida, the city.
We affectionately call Bradenton, Florida, Bradentucky. So.
And look at you now.
Look at me now.
Dave Sarakin.
Super Dave.
Bob Bradley.
Mastermind.
Landon Donovan.
Best American player.
The city of Louisville, Kentucky.
I love it here.
Louisville City FC.
Where I want to end my career as a coach.
I want to ask about a couple players. Ready for that? This is about to get dark. Paolo Del Piccolo.
A wonderful footballer, great leader, joy to coach.
Oscar Jimenez.
He thinks he's a center midfielder, and recently I've given him a couple chances to do that, and so he's all over me about keeping him at the number 8 spot.
Antoine Hopino.
My wife called him Hoppy when he was in Philly, and I love this kid. He is energy plus all the time. But like Danny, we go a long way back and have a really good experience with them, and hopefully continue to do so for a long time to come.
2 more. Cameron Lancaster.
One of the best goal scorers I've ever coached, and he is incredible in that regard.
Proof that this is exactly like our calls every week. I was kidding. I do have 2 more now.
Right.
Brad Estes' purple blazer.
That thing, I think poor John Neese, he bought those purple blazers for everybody, and Brad wears that thing so often that John has had to – I mean, those things aren't cheap either. And John has had to get Brad a new one over and over again because he wears that thing out. So I love that everybody knows him for that, though.
Last one. Danny Cruz standing next to a yardstick.
It's a very short stick.
I didn't make a go-kart joke.
I can't believe we're killing Danny on this thing. Holy cow. I'm going to have to go apologize.
Let me say this. Danny Cruz being made technical director, assistant coach. He's the one who handles the lineup card, which, as we all know, is a massive, significant responsibility. This guy does everything. He works his butt off, and I respect him to death. I wasn't going to make that joke until Devin made 4 of them, and now I can't help myself. This wasn't my fault.
I'm going to have to apologize to him for you guys once this podcast gets put out there. So
look, if Danny is short, I'm fat. We can both play games here, but I mean, it's fine.
Fine. We'll live with it. And my staff will love it that we made as much fun of Danny on this podcast as we have. But yeah.
It came in equal measure. Medicine and sugar. I think, it's just keeping his ego down.
I tell him all the time that if I didn't give him as much shit, it would mean that I didn't really love him. And clearly both of you really love Danny Cruz a lot.
Yeah, big fan of Danny Cruz. I went from almost crying a minute ago talking about Mike Duncan to almost shitting myself. I was laughing so hard. I think we'll end it there. That was a great way to finish it all. Coach, I don't think we can ever express our gratitude enough for your kindness week in and week out, and for you to take the time again to come on and shoot the shit, talk life, everything. People don't know you. This is a really, really good person, and you get an opportunity to watch his teams, listen to him, have a conversation, shake his hand, do it. You don't find many as good as him out there. Coach, thank you so very much. Michael Watts, as always, You are an honest lad. We are grateful for it. I do have one housekeeping, just a little tidbit here before we get out of here. It was, in fact, not the go-karts, and I'm so very sorry, Danny Cruz. There will be no more jokes about it. You can ride any ride that you want. We're grateful for you. We do love you, buddy. It was, however, the teacups, and he cannot ride the teacups or ride Starry Night. So, Danny Cruz, good luck on your venture. We hope that puberty hits one of these days. John Hackworth, we are beyond grateful for your time. Michael Watts, get the hell out of here.
He's 5'8". The guy is bigger than the average American man.